Welcome to Hard Target Living, a movement to reduce violence and crime by reducing the number of potential victims for criminals and predators to choose from. I'm Donna Miles, and I learned the hard way by way of a violent home invasion that criminals and predators want easy targets to carry out their evil intent. So my goal is to show you how to remove yourself as a potential victim by sharing some of the risk management strategies I've learned and adopted over the past 17 years. These are the same strategies used by elite protectors for the rich and famous to keep them safe. But rather than just talking at you and rattling off some generic safety tips you may or may not remember or care about, I'm going to start by asking you a few questions because I want you to really think about how you currently think about your personal safety. And I'm assuming if you're watching or listening to this, you do put some thought into your degree of personal safety and you don't live in a bubble believing laws, police, or your safe neighborhood protect you. They don't. So my questions are, have you ever taken or considered taking a self-defense course or enrolling in some form of martial arts so you'll be able to fight back against an attacker? Or do you own a firearm or considering getting one, again, so that you can defend yourself against that evil attacker? Now, if you have children, have you enrolled them in martial arts training so they'll learn to defend themselves when you aren't there to protect them? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then let me ask you this. Do you believe learning to fight back is your only course of action for staying safe? That the world is so full of violent predators, it's just a matter of time and bad luck that determines who becomes the next victim. To be clear, I am not saying there's no value in defensive tactics training, whether it's training to use your own body to fight back or training to use a firearm for self-defense. I personally practice physical defensive tactics and defensive firearms regularly. In fact, over the past 17 years, I've accrued thousands of hours of firearms and physical defensive tactics practice. And now I'm about as well equipped to use deadly force to neutralize a threat as anyone can hope to be, and I regularly conceal carry. But none of my defensive tactics skills can help me avoid a violent encounter. They can only help me to respond to active violence. And I can state from firsthand experience, even if you do prevail in a violent encounter, that experience will fundamentally alter who you are and how you view the world. Another thing to consider is even with my thousands of hours of training, my physical defensive tactics skills are skills I don't use in my day-to-day life. I can only practice those skills against non-violent training partners or paper targets, which is not how real-world violence happens. The reason I asked you the questions I asked is to get you to begin to shift your focus away from what you really can't control in the formula for violence, which is someone else's violent criminal intent, back to what you can control, which are your habits, your beliefs, your mindsets that can unknowingly create openings for violent or predatory people to get close enough to you to cause harm in the first place. And before anyone gets their panties in a bundle thinking I'm holding potential victims responsible for being targeted for harm, I am not. Nobody is responsible for the violent actions of another person except that violent person themselves. I certainly was not responsible for the violent actions against me by the home invader, but I might have been able to avoid that experience altogether if some of my habits, beliefs, and mindsets hadn't made me such an easy target that a violent criminal was able to get within inches of my bed while I laid sleeping. I'll elaborate on those habits shortly, but first, let me explain what I mean when I refer to the formula for violence. For violence to occur, there must first be a person who has the intent to be violent, who also has the means or a method to carry out their violent intent. When a person with violent intent has the means to carry out their violent intent, a threat does exist. However, the existence of a violent threat doesn't mean you're automatically at risk for harm. And this distinction is important for you to embrace. Just because the threat of violence exists, whether it's the threat of home invasion, the threat of rape, the threat of carjacking, or anything else, doesn't mean you're destined or even statistically likely to be the victim of violence. And if you focus all your attention and worry on the existence of potential threats, then you compromise your ability to focus on what you truly do have control over. When it comes to your personal safety and minimizing your risk for harm at the hands of another person, your greatest power comes from managing the third ingredient in the formula for violence, which is the opening or opportunity for a threat to get close enough to you to inflict harm. So the formula for violence goes something like this. Violent intent times means to harm equals threat. But threat does not equal risk for harm. Threat times opportunity equals risk for harm. So your goal is to take simple steps to keep the opportunity factor as small as possible. Using my experience from home invasion as an example, I can identify habits, beliefs, and mindsets that made the opportunity factor to be home invaded pretty high. One unsafe habit we had was leaving multiple doors unlocked while we slept. It was a habit we got into because we believed we lived in a safe place. And our mindset was that it wasn't worth the inconvenience to us to have to unlock a door to go into our house because we believed we live in a safe place. So we lived with our doors always unlocked, even when we weren't home, let alone whether we were sleeping or awake. Now, the unlocked doors might not have been enough to raise our opportunity factor all alone. But another belief we had that made us vulnerable was that it was safe to invite a person with a long criminal history into our home because we were told by members of our church that he was a good guy and he was getting his life back on track. So we invited him in, and he learned about our habit of leaving our doors unlocked and decided, along with a neighbor of his, that it would be easy to home invade us by sneaking into our unlocked home while we slept. Yep. Their primary motive was to get money, and their intent was to take it through violence. And as a little aside, a person's motive and their intent are not one and the same thing. I know that whenever a high-profile crime occurs, news regularly speculates on the motive primarily, but a person's intent is much more relevant. A lot of people are motivated to get more money than they have. But their intent, if they're law-abiding people, is to work for it, not to steal it by force. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up for now. I hope by clarifying where you have control in the formula for violence, you will be able to focus most of your own personal safety efforts on identifying and minimizing any habits or beliefs you might have that could make it easier for a person with violent intent to ever get within harm's reach of you. So spend some time now thinking about what you do or don't do to secure your home, your car, your body. Do you regularly leave windows and doors unlocked? Do you have a habit of sitting in your car in parking lots with your windows down and your doors unlocked? Do you walk around in public while you're looking down at your cell phone instead of looking at others around you? Because all of those habits have the potential to create an opportunity for an opportunistic criminal looking for an easy target to choose you. Don't make it easy for them. Become a hard target, and you won't have to use whatever defensive tactic skills you might have. And back on the topic of self-defense training, commit to taking a course or enrolling yourself and or your children in some form of martial arts training. Having some defensive tactic skills will improve your self-confidence, which in turn will contribute to making you a harder target. Just don't count on any level of defensive tactic skills alone to keep you safe. If you go through your life doing nothing to prevent or avoid a violent encounter because you believe your ability to fight back will keep you safe, you might be in for a rude awakening. So until the next show, become a part of the Hard Target Living movement by identifying and minimizing any habits, any beliefs, any mindsets you have that might make you a more desirable target for a person with criminal intent. That's it for today.